With President Muhammadu Buhari's tenure less than 4 weeks to go, all that is left to remember his time in office will be his legacies and landmark projects as the next government prepares to take over. Femi Adesina, presidential spokesperson, says President Muhammadu Buhari served Nigeria meritoriously throughout his administration. In a statement on Sunday, Adesina said Buhari will not be leaving Nigeria the way he met it. Adesina also described the administration's achievement as a collector's item. Joining us on the show this morning as we take a look at the highlights of Buhari's achievement in office as his tenure comes to an end is Femi Adesina, Special Advisor, Media and Publicity to President Buhari. Well, welcome to the morning show. This ancestor here in the studio, ancestor of Aso Villa, greets you. I'm looking forward to when you join us on this side, also as an ancestor yourself. But let's go straight to business. Quickly, you released a report titled Footprints in the Sands of Time. 91 pages, 20 chapters, in which you provided a fact sheet, a one-stop shop to document the achievements of the Buhari administration. If you could just take us through the major highlights of that report to start with.
Well, thank you. Good morning. My pleasure to be here, and I say good morning to our other colleagues and friends with you out there. Yes, we released that document on Sunday because in another 1 month, President Buhari is done, and like he has said, is back at his home in Daura, and a number of us working with him are also back at our various homes and our different callings. That fact sheet was necessary because when a man has served for 8 years, it is very important that you document the things he has achieved. Otherwise, you find that revisionists can distort the history. But with this, people can always have it as a collector's item and look at what he has achieved in various spheres of national life and even internationally. You have their achievements in infrastructure, you have in legislative matters, you have in defense, in security, in oil and gas, in different areas. Even Nigerians that hold offices, significant offices internationally, are documented there because almost, if not all of them, had the support of the president before they got into those offices. So, as you have said, it's a one-stop shop for President Buhari's achievements in 8 years.
Okay, so let's analyze the one-stop shop, Mr. Adesina, and thank you for coming this morning. With regards to job creation, let's take that as one of the achievements that you've listed in this fact sheet as to the achievements of this administration. You put it at about 119,000 jobs created. However, 119,000 jobs created. However, when the president was campaigning for the votes of Nigerians, he had promised that he would create about 3 million jobs per annum. Doesn't this fall incredibly short of what he had promised Nigerians initially? I say this because yesterday, as you would know, was Workers' Day, and we just talked about the plight of Nigerian workers. So beyond the number of jobs created is even the fact that the plight of Nigerian workers, according to the NLC secretary, is lamentable. How would you describe this?
Well, did you say 3 million was the promise?
Yes. When he campaigned.
3 million?
Yes.
Okay. You see, so many of those things that are ascribed to the then candidate Buhari really didn't come from him. Many of the things. I wouldn't say he put a figure, What I recall was that President Buhari gave the percentage of joblessness in the country. I wouldn't recall that he gave a specific figure saying this is the amount of jobs we are creating. For all you know, that may have come from anywhere. But I stand to be corrected if President Buhari himself gave that figure of 3 million. But then, be that as it may, it is the job and the duty of government to create an enabling environment for jobs in the country. It is not government itself that creates jobs. All it does is to create an enabling environment. Most of the jobs you need in a country will come from the private sector. As long as you have an enabling environment, it's the private sector that will then create the jobs. The 119 figure, that 1,000 you mentioned, is from a specific sector, from infrastructure. During the creation of infrastructure, railways, roads, airports, and all that, jobs are created. Those are the jobs you have there as 119, and not a total gamut of jobs created. That will come from somebody like Dr. Chris Ngige, who is Minister for Labor and Employment. We in that fact sheet, we don't have the total number of jobs created. But like I said earlier, government just creates an enabling environment for jobs, and it is not the one that actually creates jobs.
Mr. Femi Adesina, good to see you once again. And as you're outgoing, I'd say, you've served your nation in your own capacity, and I wish you very well, as you're outgoing.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask, in that fact sheet, you talked about infrastructure, and you touted the Siemens deal. By now, based on your benchmark, we should have some level of appreciable development in power. But today, you have not met all the deadline on the Siemens deal. Where are we on the Siemens deal?
Yes, this Siemens deal is work in progress. Yes, there are benchmarks what we should have achieved by 2022, by 2024, by 2025, and all that. But remember that that deal was entered into before the world economy was buffeted by COVID-19. And so it threw a lot of things off balance. You realize that for almost a year or thereabout, there was no action, no movement on that deal, because the world was grappling with other things. It was after the world, including Nigeria, found its footing, the action then started on that deal again. So the Siemens deal is well, is alive. The timelines may have suffered some lack of meeting the stated times, but it continues.
So where are we on the deal as we speak today? What has been done? Because this deal became so convoluted when the Nigerian writer did ask Angela Merkel about the deal in Germany, and she looked at it and, almost did not even say anything in response, as regards knowing the situation. So where are we? What has been done? I know the timeline has been flawed. I know that's a failed project already, based on where we are supposed to be that we have not become. But where are we on the deal? What has been done as regards Siemens now?
Well, I think, Rufai, you are particularly cynical and skeptical in all your dealings. To now call the Siemens deal a failed deal doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a deal between two countries that is ongoing. The fact that one government cannot achieve something does not mean it has failed. Okay, governance is a continuum.
Mr. Adesina, what's the definition of failure? I'd like to ask.
Let me make my point. You asked me to come here so that we can engage. But if you don't let me talk, that engagement will not work. Okay. So, a government does what it can do on any specific project. And the other government that comes continues. So, it will be pontificating to say the Siemens deal has failed. No, that will be your opinion. You have a right to it, but it doesn't mean you are correct.
Well, Femi,
wherever the Siemens deal gets to, as of May 29, the new government continues.
Femi Adesina, I think you still haven't asked my original question, which is, this is a 20-chapter document, 91 pages. Now, just by way of summary, what are those specific things that will constitute what you describe as footprints in the sands of time? I mean, those that you think major takeaways for Nigerians.
I think everything there, depending on what you are interested in. Everything. I remember under President Olusegun Obasanjo when there were issues between Lagos state government and the federal government, and Supreme Court ruled on the issue of local government. And asked the Supreme Court to interpret its judgment. The justices said the judgment was written in English. And that's what I'll say. This fact sheet was written in English. And so anybody that can read English will pick what he wants.
Okay, how much effort have you made to circulate this fact sheet, to make it available to the generality of Nigerians in different languages apart from English?
Okay, the fact sheet was released on Sunday. As we speak, go to all major blogs now. That fact sheet has been placed as commercial items online on all major blogs. Go there. Online newspapers, blogs, everywhere. That fact sheet is there as a commercial item. There is hardly anywhere you will click, any reputable blog you will click, and you will not find that fact sheet there. Well, has it been done in other languages? Not yet. Can it be done? Yes, it can be done. But for now, it's in English, which is our national language.
All right. Let me go back to the question I asked with regards to job creation, because that's quite a big one for Nigerians. You mentioned that government doesn't create jobs, just to create an enabling environment for creating jobs. In your fact sheet, you cited a number of programs that I'll mention two. One, you talked about the Anchor Borrowers Program. You also talked about expanding the social register. How well did these programs do? And do you have facts as to how much jobs they created? Then the controversy around the defaulting of loans for the Anchor Borrowers Program, the fact that the farmers themselves didn't quite get access to these loans in some instances. How successful were these programs, and what was the impact in terms of job creation?
Thank you. It's on record that when the administration came in 2015, there were about 5 million rice farmers in the country. When the Anchor Borrowers Program came, the original target was rice farming. And within 1-2 years, rice farmers had risen to 12 million, from 5 million to 12 million. You can calculate the number of jobs that had been created that way. And then in terms of repayment of loans, the central bank came out about 4-6 weeks ago to give the percentage of repayment. And that put a lie to the figure that was out there about repayment, because people, let me use the word cynics and skeptics again, began to circulate some false figures about repayment. And central bank came out showing the figure. I don't have it on my fingertips now, but I think repayment is about 70% or thereabout. Who would you rather believe? Those circulating figures or central bank, which is at the center of that project? So, that's it.
Right. Mr. Adesina, there are some wins which we celebrate as regards infrastructure, rail, and all of that. But there are also some wins that are questionable. I'll give you an instance. And I'll come back to the Siemens, because I asked a question, you didn't answer it. I said, where are we now? Because based on the agreement, we're supposed to be churning out 11,000 megawatts now by 2023. So where are we now as regards that? That's the first question. Secondly, yes, a lot of projects were done.
And
no, I've not finished, sir. I've not finished. A lot of projects were done, which are some quick wins, good wins. The airport in Lagos, yes, where's a new look? But there was a structural defect from the start that everybody knew about that airport, that it couldn't land wide-body planes. Now they have to amend that structural defect. And a lot of people would argue that why should we go through that quality of infrastructure and projects that is below par? But there are some other wins. Those two questions.
Okay, the first one, where we are specifically on the Siemens deal. I remember that the power minister spoke about it maybe about 2 months ago. There is nothing I'm going to add to what the power minister has said, because he's the one that is at the center of it. It revolves around him and his office. And he gave specific positions of where the country was on the Siemens deal. That, I think, answers your question. For me to come out to say anything now, and if it goes contrary to what the minister has done, then it creates another controversy, which is not our intention. Find out what the power minister has said in terms of that Siemens deal, and that will be the position on that. Then, structural defect at the Lagos airport, I do not know about it because it's not my area. If you see the Minister of Aviation, he could respond to that. But then, anybody can talk about defects. They may know, they may not know. It's the easiest thing is to criticize. But what we know is that in terms of airports, great things have been done under this administration. Abuja, Kano, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Lagos. Great things have been done in that area.
Well, Femi, yesterday was May Day. And we are all workers, as we have said repeatedly on this program. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation at the May Day event was saying, oh, this government has promoted decent work. But organized labor doesn't seem to think so. Organized labor has been griping about proposed removal of fuel subsidy and the difficulties that Nigerian workers face. And could you tell us what you think in real terms the Buhari administration has done for the Nigerian worker to change his or her fortunes between 2015 and today, with inflation at over 22%, with unemployment rate at over 33%, with so much agony among Nigerian workers?
Thank you. My first experience of the Workers' Day was in 1977. I was a secondary school boy. That is my first recollection of Workers' Day. But do you know that from that 1977 to now, the message that comes from labor every year has always been the same? The same. Go down history and see what labor has said every May Day. The same. The same. The same. I think a country cannot be static and stagnant. There will always be some redeeming angles, but they never talk about those redeeming angles. For instance, in late 2015 or 2016, at the Federal Executive Council meeting, one minister raised the issue that with the way the civil service particularly is, or was at that time, that if the government cut the number of workers by 60%, the civil service will still continue to function and even function better. You know what the president said? He said, if it lies in my power, not one person will lose his or her job. Not one person will lose his or her job. The average civil servant will not remember that. They will not remember that. all they will remember was, this was not done, this was not done, this was not done. But the fact that retrenchment didn't happen, despite all the contrary winds this administration had to contend with, they would not remember that. The administration has done a lot. It increased salaries, even at a time that it could barely afford it. The president used to tell a story when the demand for salary increase became vociferous. He said a woman went to fetch firewood. She had a huge pile of firewood. When it is time to carry it onto her head, she couldn't carry it because it was too heavy. And you know what the woman did? She began to fetch more firewood and added to that pile. What she had, she couldn't carry. Then she began to add more. That was like an allegory for the salary situation in the country. What the government was carrying, it could barely carry. There were states that couldn't pay what was on ground. When this administration came, minimum of 27 states were owing salaries. It was the president who helped them to pay those salaries. Now, they now added to that salary. No wonder a number of states couldn't pay. So this administration has done a lot for workers in the country. Their leadership will know it. But if they keep saying the same thing, it's just typical of Nigerians and typical of labor. Go and check Mayday messages since 1977, when we began to observe it in this country. The rhetorics have been the same.
All right. Well, Mr. Adesina, you said that the rhetorics are the same because they complain every year that a lot has been done. Perhaps, even though a lot has been done, the fact that it's been overshadowed by the things that haven't been done and the plight of the ordinary man. I mean, I'm sure you'd agree with me that the purchasing power of the Nigerian worker has reduced significantly since your principal came into office in terms of food inflation, inflation rate, how much the worth of the naira. So you can understand why they cannot quite see this good you talk about because there's so many things that overshadow it. But let me ask you about one of the achievements you listed in terms of the bills signed into law, the Petroleum Industry Act of 2021. One of the key elements of that act is the removal of subsidy, which your government has said a number of times that there was no going back on it. They were going to do away with subsidy before May 29. However, at the last NEC meeting, the last for this administration, the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning had said they were going to recommend to the president that they could not remove subsidy to the president. What is the stance of the president? You have 27 more days to go. Are we going to see the removal of subsidy under this administration or not? And in the event that perhaps you take on the recommendation of NEC, what would happen to the $800 million loan from the World Bank?
Thank you. The position, which we can call the final position, is that that subsidy will not be removed in the life of this administration. And the explanation as a last week after NEC meeting was that it wanted to give the incoming administration opportunity to further consult on the matter. That is where we are on fuel subsidy. Since 2015, President Buhari had always been very reluctant to do a wholesome removal of fuel subsidy. He will tell us that it makes economic sense, but it is social nonsense. He will say when Nigeria was earning over $100 from petroleum, what did the ordinary Nigerian benefit? So why must he be the one to bear the brunt at the time when oil prices have collapsed and there are challenges? That is why he had been very reluctant to remove fuel subsidy. And I forgot the point I wanted to make. There was one very important point that came to my mind on that fuel subsidy. If it comes back, I'll say it. But then all the major candidates of the different parties during the campaign promised that they would remove fuel subsidy. All of them. Check. Is it Obi of Labour? Is it Atiku of PDP? Is it Bola Tinubu of APC? They all said fuel subsidy was no longer realistic. IMF, World Bank, or other multilateral organizations have told Nigeria, this thing is no longer realistic. Yes, I recall now what I wanted to say, that the president had been convinced over the years, rather reluctantly. You know, his position at the beginning was that there was nothing called subsidy. He said it was fraud.
Yes, that was a scam.
And he was not alone. A number of Nigerians joined him at that. But later, he became convinced, seeing what government was paying out monthly, that had to stop and be deployed to other productive areas of the economy. Nigeria cannot continue to pay what it had been paying on subsidy. $800 million palliative?
Yes.
Well, I do not have information on that. Maybe if you ask the finance minister, she will tell you. But I don't have information on that beyond what she said. It was discussed at Federal Executive Council meeting, and she briefed on it after that meeting. I don't have information on it beyond that.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Femi Adesina.